All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome, off-season edition. Um, hey Jerry, we see you. Uh, the second week of OTAs. Bob, Sean, what do you make so far of the first week of OTAs? Some of the news that came out regarding Michael Thomas, Jameis Winston, that stuff. What do you make of this so far, Bob?
First of all, yeah, Saints fans, it's OTAs. It's May. Let's not read too much or too little into really anything. And Michael Thomas is not ready yet. That doesn't mean he doesn't want to play for the Saints. That doesn't mean he's still injured. That doesn't mean he has a problem with teammates or coaches. It just means he is not ready to take the field yet. He has been at team facilities every day working out. So I take that as an outstanding sign. Jameis Winston was walking around with a limp. Well, oh my God. He is less than 7 months removed from reconstructive knee surgery, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be thankful he is on the field. I didn't expect him to participate in any workouts whatsoever. But Jameis being Jameis, he wanted to get some work in with the receivers and the running backs. So, again, very good sign. The rookies, of course, the rookies are going to look great. They're in shorts and shells. Nobody's hitting them. They don't have to break down any defenses or any offensive play calling. It's nice to see the players back onto the field. So let's take that for what it is.
First off, Tig, I appreciate the shout out here.
I saw that. Thank you.
Yeah, favorite
Thank you very
podcast
much.
is Saints Happy Hour, and Saints Happy Hour that is a special podcast full of special people. So I appreciate getting mentioned in any
Yeah.
getting any kind of recognition next to that one. That's for sure.
Guys,
Sean,
could I make a quick announcement? Speaking of
sure,
podcasts,
absolutely.
Brendan Boylan and I are relaunching the Bayou Blitz podcast. The
Good.
exact date is to be determined, but we are looking at about a week or so before the official start of training camp. It will be, for those of you that followed Bayou Blitz before, it will again be Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Kyle Mosley will still be involved, with the podcast, as will our other Saints News Network contributing writer John Hendricks. But I'm excited to work with Brendan. If you guys follow us, during the regular season, Brendan and I do the live pregame and live halftime shows. I think we got a real good chemistry, together. And he was real excited when we brought up the idea to him. So I'm really excited for the relaunch. We're going to be changing a few things, but as I said, the exact date to be determined. But I'm really excited to be back, relaunching that one.
Excellent news.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great news. That's great news. Yeah, because that is a good good podcast. Yeah, and we've missed you guys. We really have. And if you guys have checked out that stuff during halftime and the pregame, it's really special because it's one of the things I really like about your halftime one is here you are breaking down what you're seeing as it's happening. So it's an instant reaction podcast.
Well, it is, and you get to see Angry Bob from time to time too. So
Yeah. Well, that's why I can't do a podcast during a game because I'm not rational at that point. I really am not.
look, I warned our bosses what could happen, and so far I've refrained from dropping any f-bombs. But I'll tell you what, damn it, I've been close.
Oh man, if I'm really into a game, I am wishing not just bodily harm, but career-ending injuries to certain players if
Oh
you
yeah,
really piss me off. I
oh
mean,
yeah.
Questioning their heritage and
oh, I already assumed long ago their mom and dad were never married. I mean,
their family tree doesn't fork.
no,
Straight up,
no,
yep.
yeah. Not only do I say that mom and dad would never marry, but these players engage in a lot of incest. So, I mean, so, uh,
But no, I mean, yeah, Brendan is a great guy. I'd love to have him on, with us a couple weeks before our official launch to kind of promo it. I think it goes without
Absolutely.
saying we would love, both of you, both individually and together to be involved too, because you guys very much launched my career, especially as as an on-air personality, for lack of a better term. So obviously we want you guys involved with us too.
absolutely. So Sean, what I was going to ask before we got sidetracked a little bit with the good news, OTAs, how do you look at these things? I mean, to me, it's
Very lightly.
it's one step above a pickup game or your friends throwing around a Nerf football in a field. I mean, that's what
About the best thing that I could say about it. It gives rookies and or new members of the team the opportunity to interact and to get familiar with the system somewhat. It gives those players that haven't made the choice to stay in shape. It gives them an opportunity to get in shape for training camp.
Good point.
As far as Jameis, I don't read anything into that, as Bob said.
No.
Obviously, he's going to be under an incredible amount of pressure this year to deliver. So, feeling that pressure, he feels like he needs to get the work in. And, I mean, he's limping. Like Bob said, 7 months ago, he had his knee completely reconstructed. And it's not like Onyemata's out there bouncing him off the field either.
Absolutely. I mean, and they're not going to either. And
if not having Michael Thomas at OTAs means having him during the season, amen.
Always.
I think the thing about Michael Thomas really was fans were disappointed that they didn't get to see him out there catching passes from Winston, doing what they saw Chris Olave do. Yeah. I think that's what it really boils down to. But to me,
we got all these. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like you said, if Michael Thomas misses OTAs but is ready for training camp and is playing all 17 games plus if they get into the postseason, it's a great trade-off. It's just right now people I think are so starved for Saints football to get started.
Absolutely. We've got all these shiny new toys and everybody wants to play with them.
That's it.
Well, and to me, this is probably the most question mark filled Saints team since 2006, honestly. Because you've got a new head coach, you have a starting quarterback who you saw only briefly last year, but you have a starting quarterback trying to reconstruct a career. You've got a bunch of new draft picks coming in, and you think on paper you've got a team that probably or should advance pretty far into the postseason, if not, win the division outright. And it's a weak NFC team. Back up, a weak NFC conference. So, you think that, hey, this is a season I can't wait to get started. Let's see how far they go. Let's see what they do. And, so people just look at OTAs as like, okay, this is one step closer. I think today marks 100 days before the beginning of the season. So, this will be the last when minicamp happens in 2 weeks. It'll be the last bit of football until the real thing starts in training camp end of July.
Yep.
So, Bob, I'm going to kind of get you to talk about your article a little bit. So what, you wrote in your article today about Jameis Winston and Dennis Allen kind of being on a hot seat. Not that they'll get fired or get cut or anything like that, but it's a season that can define what kind of coach and what kind of quarterback they are.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what you wrote?
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to. I constructed the article in the way of a roundtable, so that way we could get not only my own opinion in the article, but also that of Kyle Mosley, John Hendricks, and Brendan Boylan. But the basic question was, who is under more pressure, Jameis Winston or Dennis Allen? And the reason why I presented it that way, both men are replacing literally franchise legends. Winston gets his second crack at, like you said, Alan, we saw a small sample size of him as a Saints quarterback last year, but certainly not big enough to make a determination on whether he's the guy or not. So, therefore, he gets his first true test this year. And he does so with a new coach in the way of Dennis Allen, who is replacing the legendary Sean Payton. Now, I don't have to tell you guys, historically how difficult it is to replace a legend, let alone, two men trying to do it with two legends. So I wanted to know and, kind of presented it out there, each of our opinions, who's under more, and not so much from the fan base, because we know our fan base is, going to be ready to string one or both of them up at the gallows after a couple of losses. But more importantly, and I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this, which of the two men, Jameis Winston or Dennis Allen, are under more pressure to succeed immediately from, yes, the fans, but more importantly, the front office and ownership?
Sean, do you want to take that one first? You want me to answer it?
Well, in my humble opinion, Dennis Allen's leash is going to be much, much longer. As we've talked about previously on here, you can't fairly judge Dennis Allen by his time in Oakland, I don't believe, because as Allen's pointed out on numerous occasions, that organization at that time was probably one of the most dysfunctional in the league, because you had senility from the top. And I digress. I think that the pressure on Winston to deliver this season is going to be incredible. We saw a little bit of him last year, and in his appearances in those first 7 games, he showed a lot of promise. He showed poise. He showed ability. He cut down on the turnovers, which was a huge question mark going into the season. And then he gets hurt. And in the off season, you brought in one quarterback for basically the purpose of being a backup in Andy Dalton, but you didn't go after a new starting quarterback. And that puts even more pressure on Winston to deliver.
Well, I certainly think Winston feels the pressure of this is his last real opportunity to prove he can be an NFL starter. If he fails here, it's very unlikely he will ever get an opportunity to start again. He probably will bounce around as a career backup. But I do think the pressure is on Dennis Allen. I think Dennis Allen, not only is he replacing Sean Payton, but Sean Payton left him, wide receiver and LSU players aside, Sean Payton kind of has left him a very talented team to take over. And while Allen has turned around that defense, we don't know what kind of coach he's going to be. And he was the easy choice, but not necessarily the most popular choice if you poll Saints fans. There was a lot of Saints fans who kind of wanted to, rip out the pages and start all over again with an all-new coaching staff. And, you saw names like Eric Bieniemy thrown out a lot. as a head coach, and then Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator for the Saints. So, I think Allen is under a lot of pressure to prove that, yes, the Raiders were a fluke for him, that he has learned how to be a better head coach. And I have a feeling, if this team regresses, that the public will sour on him quickly. Now, that doesn't mean the front office is going to fire him. That's not the same thing. But it is, in my opinion, I think Allen has to prove that he can not only do what Sean Payton did and take this team back into the postseason, but show that, he is the right guy who made the right decisions, the right hires, brought in the right kind of people to make this a successful team. So, yeah, I just feel like he's under tremendous pressure. That doesn't discount Winston, but I think the Saints' attitude is, okay, if Winston fails, but the team still wins, fine. We'll go get it. We'll go look at a quarterback next year. The Garoppolos, the Baker Mayfields, who knows who else will be available this time next year. Even in the draft, although they don't have a first-round pick, people believe that, that Sean Payton is only doing this TV gig for a year, and the Saints are going to get at least one first-round pick next year. So that's just how I feel. I mean, Bob, I know you were doing this a roundtable thing. Where do you see it?
You bring up some great points about Dennis Allen, and I don't disagree with any of them. But prior to Sean Payton's success, we were talking about a franchise in the New Orleans Saints that had little patience with their head coaches. Very, very little. Sean Payton helped change that culture. And because of that, the Saints are now viewed league-wide as one of the more stably run franchises in the NFL. So unless the bottom completely drops out on this team, and Dennis Allen just stinks up the joint, everything is a dysfunctional mess. I think that his job is probably safe even if they regress a little bit and miss the playoffs. Now, his seat becomes a hell of a lot hotter in 2023 if that happens.
Absolutely.
But because of ownership, Mrs. B and Mickey Loomis, and their patience, and what we think is going to be mostly a continued culture within the coaching staff, I think they're going to give Dennis Allen a longer leash than Jameis Winston. My choice was Jameis Winston for having the greater pressure on him because, as Sean said, they flirted with Deshaun Watson in the offseason. I don't think that flirtation was nearly as heavy as what people think, because I truly believe that the Saints could have easily matched what Cleveland gave up to get Watson had they truly wanted to. So some difficult conversations had to take place between Mickey Loomis, Mrs. Benson, and Jameis Winston, because by all indications, Jameis was kept very much in the loop during the flirtation and the run for whatever that was at Watson. Then they ultimately, as we all know, signed Winston to a 2-year contract. Now, the caveat to that contract is, as we mentioned on here, is it's an easy out for the Saints if Jameis plays poorly. If Jameis plays poorly or they want to go another direction, they can easily do so with little to no financial penalty after this year. So in response, they didn't get Watson. However hard you believe they pushed, the fact is they didn't get Watson. They then turned to Jameis Winston and said, "We're going to push all our chips into the center of the table this year. You get Michael Thomas back. You already have Alvin Kamara. When healthy, this is the best offensive line in the league. And we lost Teron Armstead. We'll replace that with a first-round draft choice. We're going to give you another first-round draft choice and a wide receiver, one that fits the style of play that you like to do, Jameis. By the way, while we're at it, let's sign you a 5-time Pro Bowl wide receiver too, a hometown hero, blah, 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 blah." Jameis now has zero excuses left. If this team misses the playoffs or even bows out with an early first-round exit, I think Winston's head will be the first to roll. And I agree with what you said before, Alan. I think Jameis also realizes that this is his last chance to be considered an elite or at least a top tier quarterback. I think he's still good enough that if, say, worst case scenario, he fails in New Orleans, he's still good enough and young enough. He'll probably be a stopgap starter from there on out through his career. But his career in New Orleans hinges upon how he performs in 2022. Black and white. It's as simple as that.
Completely agree.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I said this is probably his last chance to get a long-term starting gig, because then you become the journeyman quarterback who comes in, bounces around from team to team to team, plays for the Jets.
He becomes Andy Dalton.
Essentially,
Andy Dalton, though, is playing at the end of his career. I'm talking more like he becomes the Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who essentially replaced him briefly back in 2018. He becomes that kind of guy or Tyrod Taylor, somebody who starts a few games before the rookie takes over from him, and he's never viewed as a franchise or a long-term starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And I remember the Saints showed a big degree of faith in Winston by not pursuing Garoppolo, by not pursuing Mayfield, by not drafting a quarterback, not only in the first round, but they had an opportunity to do so in the second and move up in the third as well. And they still bypassed those opportunities. They believe in Jameis Winston for at least this year.
Right. They definitely, and that's where I was going to go with next. They are definitely giving Jameis all the opportunities and the tools or excuses to be successful. If you cannot be successful with the receivers we put together, if you cannot be successful with the defense we gave you, with the running backs that you have, and I mean primarily Alvin Kamara, playing in the NFC South where you've been your entire career, that's the key. Now, whether Jameis takes advantage of these opportunities, that's what we have to see. He says all the right things, and you see a lot of the right things in practice, in training camp. It becomes a question of, for me, what happens when this team goes down by double digits, in a game? What happens when things break down? What happens when you feel the pressure to make the play? Are you going to show the patience that you say you've learned from Drew Brees just to live another down and just basically work like a wave on a rock? You just erode the land away and take, like my best example I always look at is the Minnesota playoff game from 2017 minus the last 10 seconds of the second half. Everything that could go wrong for the Saints in that first half went wrong. The one promising drive they had, Drew Brees threw an interception. Minnesota is firmly in control of this game. The crowd is loud. You got that stupid skull chant. They're blowing that big goofy horn, all that stuff. And Drew Brees comes out and slowly and methodically starts eating away at the lead. The defense makes a great play. Marcus Williams, great play in that game, and they make it 17-14. And suddenly the crowd's a lot quieter, and the Saints offense looks like they're in total control. And honestly, if Willie Snead completes that pass to Alvin Kamara, who is wide the F open, no one is within 20 yards of him. We don't worry about the last 10 seconds of that game.
No.
And because there's no way that Vikings team is coming back. They were whipped. Well, Michael Thomas broke Xavier Rhodes. I don't watch that last 10 seconds of the game, but I watch that second half so often just to watch Xavier Rhodes lose his shit because of what Michael Thomas is doing to him the whole game. He is pissed. They show him on the sideline losing his mind. They're winning. He is losing his friggin' mind. Sendeo gets knocked out of the game partially because of something Xavier Rhodes did.
Mhm.
You know, he was trying to make a big hit on Thomas, and he hits his own teammate, and he's pissed. You know, so we've seen that out of Drew Brees, and that's not saying I expect that kind of behavior out of Jameis Winston. That's not a fair comparison at all. But what defines you as a franchise quarterback is your ability to come back from behind again and again and again, not with a whole shitload of big plays, but just methodically, patiently working your way, making the little plays until the momentum changes. Your defense starts making plays. And, you know, the 49ers game, the 49ers playoff game, minus the last minute and a half. Drew Brees threw not one, but two friggin' game-winning touchdown passes. You know, that's a comeback that was robbed from him. But, again, anything that could go wrong, 5 friggin' turnovers. You lost Pierre Thomas in the game, and yet it started
in the first quarter.
Yeah, the first drive. That first drive, that was going to be a touchdown if Dante Whitner doesn't take that cheap friggin' shot and goes for the head. But yeah, I mean, 5 friggin' turnovers, and yet they never lost their cool. They just kept playing their game until the plays started happening. You know, so yeah, I mean, and of course the Redskins game in 2017, you know, where you come back with less than 4 minutes in the game, and you know everybody's leaving the stadium, and they come back and win that game in overtime. I mean, just you know, that to me, that's what Jameis Winston has to be able to show.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, you know, earlier in his career with Tampa Bay, and we saw him do it twice against New Orleans. You know, once in the 2017 season finale.
Yeah,
a game that didn't mean much to the Saints, but they were there to win. Winston shows me that he has that potential, but as you ask, Alan, or as you point out, he needs to show it that he can do it time and time and time again. You know, basically whenever called upon. That's the difference between championship quarterbacks and middle tier quarterbacks.
Yep. Exactly. Absolutely. Okay, so Anna brought this up, and we might as well talk about it a little bit. So, old-time Saints player Hakeem Hicks, former Chicago Bear, too, is now signed with Tampa Bay, which probably means that Sue is not going to be back with the Bucs. He is still out there as a free agent. How do y'all see this signing? I honestly don't see very much out of this because I think, you know, Hicks and Vita Vea basically play the same position. So you're going to try and do the heavy lunch bunch with these two in the middle now. I mean, how do you see this, Bob?
I agree. I think Akeem Hicks still has some ball left in him, but he has to be on a limited snap count. And the interior of that Buccaneers defensive line is now extremely thin because they've not only lost Sue, presumably, but they lost a couple of other depth pieces. Akeem Hicks is at a point in his career where, if you run him on a big snap count, he's going to look like a Pro Bowler early on, but he's going to wear down by midseason and give you absolutely nothing, down the stretch. B, Akeem Hicks is not nearly the run defender that Ndamukong Suh was. So how does that affect that run defense? Are they going to have to leave Vita Vea in more, thereby taking the risk of wearing him down? Hicks will make the week 2 matchup against New Orleans that much more interesting. Just one more trash talker on the field. And he's a flashy name. To add to Tom Brady and his senior tour. But I agree with you. I don't. Hicks is a good player, but he's not going to be a difference maker for this Tampa Bay defense.
Sean, how do you see it?
He's in an awfully big hurry to get his ass whipped twice a year by a team you don't like.
Yeah, right.
And it's funny because
we need to introduce him to Chauncey Gardner Johnson.
It's funny. The more time it's passed, the fewer people who even remember Hakeem Hicks being with the Saints. I mean, he has very few former teammates, and he's been gone, 4 years, 5 years now?
5 or 6, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think he left in 2015, so it might be 6. This will be his 7th year he's been gone. So, yeah, I mean, except for Cam Jordan and Mark Ingram, there's very few players left on that roster that he's played with. So yeah, it's just funny that he has this grudge against the Saints, and yet most of the Saints players look at him like, I don't even know who you are. It's like Thanos, I mean, it really is.
I don't, as Bob said, I don't really read too much into it because he's way closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning of it.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I don't know. Part of me was, and I know he is a aging player who's not, he just has a nasty reputation. But part of me wanted a guy like Sue, would rather a guy like Sue than Hicks, just because I feel like Sue can do more still. Even if you have him on a pitch count as far as snaps. He just seems like a more complete player than Hicks right now. Hicks is really, he's a 3-4 nose guard, and there's very few teams that run 3-4s anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think all expecting him to do is just maybe draw some double teams, tie up some offensive linemen to let the linebackers flow to the play. That's really what the Bucs are trying to get out of him. But I think you're right. I think they have a lot of depth problem in their defensive line. And we're entering a league now and I blame the Seahawks for this, but we're entering a league where teams want up to 8 defensive linemen on that field, on that team, so they can rotate them. So you have fresh pass rushers at the end of games because
they're bigger bodies. They wear out. They don't have the stamina.
Yeah,
I think would be the word for as linebackers or defensive backs do.
Well, and the thing about what the kind of league that we have now, they expect. It's almost like a basketball game. David Brenner told this joke. I'm just revealing how old I am that I know who the hell David Brenner is. But David Brenner, the former sometimes host of the Tonight Show, told this joke that basketball, he thought they should just give each team 100 points and let them play for 2 minutes. Football is becoming like this, where you give each team 28 points and you play for the last 15 minutes, maybe a whole quarter or 10 minutes of the game, okay? Because that's where the game is won or lost in the final minutes of the game. The officiating keeps the scores close. The rules keep the score close, and offenses are so powerful now, they can score quickly that now it's all about getting that final drive, that one – you make that one play at the end of a game. And what did we just talk about? The 2 Saints postseason losses were all losses that happened on the final possession of the game. So if you have fresh pass rushers coming in and that point of the game, playing those downs, you've got a better chance of winning those games. So, but I wanted to show you guys something. So my daughter texted me Saturday and says, "Hey, I'm at the antique mall and they got an old Saints program. Are you interested in it?" I said, "Really? What program is this?" And she sends me a picture of it. It's this one. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's kind of blurring. I have to get rid of this. Okay, it's Saints versus Eagles from 1967. Okay.
Wow.
there's a significance to this program. This program is for something that's 55 years old or will be 55 years old. It's in near mint condition.
Beautiful.
The significance of this program, and because it's white, it's just going to disappear. I'll have to post a picture of it. The significance of this program is this program comes from the first win in franchise history. The Saints beat the Eagles for their first ever win. Walter Flea Roberts had 3 touchdowns in that game. And no, John Butler, I was not at this game. We have a month and 11 days before I'm even born. This game was played on November 5th, 1967. So that first season, Jack's Brewery was still in existence. Jack's put a doubloon in every program for every game, and I've got the complete set. My cousin gave me that for my birthday, my 40th birthday.
Nice.
It's a complete set of those doubloons from each game, and they're all personalized. Like this one's Saints versus Eagles with the date. All right. So I start flipping through it. I'm going, man, these ads are unbelievable. You know, all these places don't exist anymore. An article on Danny Abramowitz and Tom Fears, okay, who's the head coach. I'm looking at the pictures of the players and stuff like that. And I get to a page, and I flip it open, and I don't know if you can see this. Can you see what I have in my hand? It's not holding up very well. This is the ticket from that game. So yeah.
Wow.
So I've got a copy of the ticket from the game from the first Saints win in franchise history, the program. So what I want to do is I want to frame this thing with the ticket and the complete set of doubloons from the 67 season. Yeah, and I'm going to put that next to my frame. I've got a frame of the Super Bowl program with the playoff tickets, the wild card, not the wild card, the division round, and the NFC Championship game, and put those two side by side. So, yeah,
beautiful.
$35 for this book. That was it. And I was shocked at the condition it was in. I mean, this thing, yeah, it's a little yellowed and stuff, but this obviously was in somebody's attic. And they just brought it to this antique store and said, look, I just got this old Saints program, whatever. And I'm just like, holy cow. So, yeah.
I love going to flea markets and swap meets. I look closely because you never know what you're going to find. I mean, yeah, you can literally find a treasure like that.
Mm-hmm. And for some people, you know, it's just trash. I mean, it's just a program. Right. They don't know the significance of that game. They probably weren't alive, never saw it, don't know anything about it. But yeah, it's a huge game in Saints franchise history. Arguably, probably as important of a game as their first ever game against the Rams. You know, if you can get that program, that's another one that's, you know, worth a fortune. I guarantee you, they're not going to put that one for sale for $35.
Right.
Yeah, you probably put another zero at least behind that one in this kind of shape. You know, so yeah. But yeah, so that's the answer to the trivia question. You know, if go hunt down Danny Abramowitz and have him sign it. Actually, I told that story last time. My grandmother, when she was alive, she and Danny Abramowitz went to the same church, and here I come in. I don't remember what it was. It was some holiday or some kind of get together. But I walk in, Danny Abramowitz is in my cousin's kitchen, you know, talking away. I'm like, Danny Abramowitz is in my grandmother's kitchen. I was aggravated. And of course, coincidentally enough, I got to get rid of this. I'm wearing Danny Abramowitz's jersey. I'm wearing number 46. So, but yeah. Danny is something. Danny is short too. He's not as tall as you think he would be. He's short.
Running into that camera on the sideline stunted his growth.
Yeah. You know that helmet's in the Saints Hall of Fame Museum. If you ever
Yeah.
gone there in the dome, you can see the crack the camera lens did to his helmet because it was just cheap plastic back then. That's why so many of these guys got CTE.
Mhm. Yeah.
But think about it. You take an old helmet off, and I played when I was a kid. The helmets at least had more padding in it, but
Mhm.
I can remember those plastic helmets with just the thing at the top with the straps around,
Mm-hmm.
pads around your ears, but the rest of it just kind of sat and you just kind of
Yep.
shook it. And you and your friends used to it was a big deal. Smack each other in the side of the head and make
Right.
make that thing shake. So yeah, I can only imagine. I think they got a picture of me running around with my dad's football helmet or my cousin's football helmet from the '60s. With the white face bar. The white face mask had like the teeth looking thing on it. Yeah, I think it was a real helmet because the players I was watching on TV wore gray face mask. They didn't have this white looking thing. So I thought it was a toy helmet. It had the number painted on the side and everything. So, but yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys. And I was trying to, before the show started, I wanted to take the background off. But the problem is in where I'm sitting right now, because my desk isn't here yet, I'm sitting in what we can call the sunroom in our kitchen. So the sun was still coming down when the show started, so you wouldn't have seen anything but this glare behind my
Yeah.
back. So that's why this is up right now. Um, okay, so one of the things I wanted to bring up and tell you guys about was players at this training camp coming up. It's kind of important. Maybe some fan favorites. We're not talking about undrafted free agent guys, but fan favorites or guys that you know have been on this team for a little while that might be on the bubble this year. Bob, can you think of a guy off top of your head who probably this is a make or break training camp for them to stick around?
You got to start with Zach Bond. And yeah, I wrote an article the other day that it kind of covered that same subject. Not so much bubble players as much as I listed a handful of players who I think will probably be safe because of a lack of depth at a certain position, tight end and Adam Troutman, or a first round of draft pick investment, Cesar Ruiz, or just veteran experience and experience in the system, Traquan Smith, players like that. The camp will be extremely important and probably their last chance to remain with the Saints beyond this year. But I listed Zach Bond in that article, and I only listed Bond in that reason because of his value on special teams. But I'll tell you, Zach and Alan, you and I talked about him, I think, last week. Zach has been out of position since the moment that the New Orleans Saints drafted him. And that I don't see that changing anytime soon. I just do not see him developing as an off the ball linebacker, in the manner that this team, the Dennis Allen and the defensive staff expects. And, while Bond has a good chance of sticking on the roster at the back half of the roster because he is so good on special teams, he is a name to watch because if some of those other linebackers develop, DeMarco Jackson, undrafted guy like Nephi Sewell, they brought in Eric Wilson of the Vikings. If those guys develop as defenders and are able to make a legitimate contribution on special teams, you look for Zach Bond to definitely be on the bubble.
Absolutely. Sean, anybody you can think of you think is
The one name that came immediately to mind is Traquan Smith. You've upgraded that wide receiver course so much that because of his inconsistent play, it has made him expendable.
Absolutely. I mean, his strength right now, they keep talking over and over again. He is, um, he's the best run blocker of the receiving core. But, honestly, that's not even going to be that big of an issue anymore. I mean, I think Jarvis Landry can block adequately. Yeah, and you've got two young players, cheap players too, in Callaway and Hardy, who can push him. And I'm not about to put him on the endangered roster, but I think Hardy's going to have an interesting challenge this year too, because he's going to have to show some durability. I think because you've got more depth at your wide receiving core, you're not going to ask him to go out there and run shallow crosses or jet sweeps as much as you did before. But, the undrafted free agent, and I just forgot his name. It was on the tip of my tongue. The guy who has set college records for kick returns. It starts with an S, and I just literally forgot his name.
I have it here somewhere.
Yeah.
I know Deshaun Dixon was one, but that's not the guy. Rashid Shaheed.
Rashid Shaheed. Thank you. I'm curious to see how he what kind of practice, training camp he has. And if he returns some kicks for a touchdown, it's tempting to put Hardy on one side and Shaheed on the other and say, okay, you decide what you're going to do with the ball. Are you going to squib kick it every time? We'll take the ball, or you're going to kick it out of bounds. We'll take the ball at the 40. But, I'm curious to see if this guy really works out well. Do the Saints keep 6 receivers instead of 5? That's when it becomes a numbers game. And how much does Hardy offer you versus this undrafted rookie? Now, granted, Hardy's a Pro Bowler, so, but he has been injured the past couple of years. He has a suspension in his background too. How does that all work out? And that's just a guy I'm throwing out there as a player to watch, not as a player in danger of getting cut. So I think both of those are, and I agree with you. I think Traquan Smith's on his way out, honestly, unless Callaway totally flops this preseason. And Traquan Smith, who has been missed September in the past, has this unbelievable camp. I think that's his number one competition.
Hey, well, and we know Sean Payton loved Traquan Smith. That's the only reason he's still on the team. But I keep trying to tell people, I'm like, look, the Saints simply aren't going to keep 6 active receivers on game day. They aren't. And you have Michael Thomas. You have Chris Olave, you have Jarvis Landry. Those are going to be your top 3 receivers. Yep. Now, I think you can make a strong case for Deontay Hardy being the best receiver on this team last year.
Yes.
And a very underrated route runner, extremely dangerous kick returner. But you do bring up a lot of interesting durability questions. And don't forget the fact that Deontay is going into the last year of his contract. So that is something to keep in mind too. But you have Hardy, Callaway, and Traquan. Now, I think the odd man out is going to be Traquan unless he vastly outplays Callaway. But what if a guy like Rashid Shaheed or Aesop Winston, he flashed a little bit as a returner last year too. What if one of those guys really, really shine as a returner? And it makes Dennis Allen and, more importantly, Pete Carmichael feel like, you know what, Deontay Hardy's expendable. Let's trade him. Traquan Smith has some experience in this league and is a deep threat. One man's trash is another man's gold. Let's trade him. Callaway showed in his first 2 years in the league, Callaway showed he could run routes pretty solid. Let's trade him. I think if a veteran is going to get moved, this is the position that is going to happen. And I know, I don't think any of the 3 of us are saying that we expect Smith, Callaway, or Hardy to get cut. But that's definitely an interesting position to watch. Yeah, even really starting from mini camp on.
Exactly. I don't expect all three to still be on this team at the beginning of the season.
Neither. Well, 5150 clips, is that a Van Halen reference? I'm just curious. I see 5150 and I think Van Halen, but I'm probably aging myself there too. But
the first album without Dave.
Yeah. He did point out they paid Rashid Shaheed a lot of money to sign. That's why I think he and Smoke Monday probably are the two most likely undrafted free agent guys to make this team. So I just threw Hardy out there just because, is there much of a degree of separation between him and Rashid Shaheed? I knew I was going to mess that up. Is there much of a difference between the two? And that's the only reason why I threw him out there. Honestly, I think they do keep 6 receivers. We named the top 3. I think Callaway is the leader right now with Tre'Quan Smith. Those two are the ones that are fighting for probably arguably the 5th receiving slot. Who becomes that 6th guy? Who is going to be the Deontay Harris, Deontay Hardy kind of player in the undrafted room that makes the receiving core this year? Is the one guy you're looking and going, oh yeah, there's a guy I can see the development. Could be Aesop's Winston, could be somebody we're not even thinking about,
right.
Baker from last year. Could be any of those guys. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yes.
The safety room, where we've got a lot of safeties on this roster, but it doesn't seem we have safeties that are locked into one position, which fits, Dennis Allen's MO. He likes having guys who can play multiple positions. But is there a safety you see who's kind of in danger of losing his job or losing a roster spot?
Sean?
Are we categorizing PJ as a safety now?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah, he's almost 100% a safety.
I would say he might be on the bubble.
I think I'm only throwing that.
And that's not because I don't like him. I just want to clarify that.
Well, the reclamation project from the Bucks, I think he's a guy to watch.
Yes.
What happens with him if he starts to look like he can make plays and shows a lot of the promise that he showed with Tampa? I do think PJ Williams' spot's in danger. I don't think it's in danger the first 3 weeks of the season because Marcus May is suspended.
Yeah.
But I do think when May comes back that a guy like PJ Williams is really going to have to show that he deserves to be on this roster, and you could either waive or try and put on the practice squad. I can't think of his last name either. Justin, what is
Evans?
Justin Evans. Thank you. I should remember that. Miss Evans, go to Gunsmoke. Keep that in your mind. Same with Linda Evans. That's another name that pops in my head. Okay, so somebody brought up. Yeah, I don't see Sorensen's competing with JT Gray and Evans to an extent for special teams only. He is not a safety. Actually, Sorensen is probably competing with Zach Bond for special team snaps.
That's a good call.
I don't think, if Sorensen's probably like Chris Banjo, if the only way he's going to see time as a safety in the defense is either we're blowing somebody out or Moses is standing out there and there's no blood on the door frame of the Saints facility and the entire safety room's been killed. I mean, that's the only way he sees any kind of time. I think I'm curious to see what happens with Justin Evans. I mean, yeah, he is the Vinny right now he's the Vinny Cincinnati. For those of you who don't remember the 24 draft class. No, was it 2014 or was it 20?
It was 2014.
20, yeah, we drafted like four players that had one good knee among them all.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like it was him, a linebacker. We drafted someone with a bad back. It was horrible, horrible draft class.
Was that the same class as Kikaha?
Yes. No, Kikaha was 2015, I think. Yep.
Yeah. No, that was the Brandon Cooks draft class, when Brandon Cooks is the only player who actually panned out. The rest of them were all duds. And
I remember Cincinnati, Ronald Powell, Kari Ford, and I'm missing somebody.
Yeah, I think Ford had the bad back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, Ronald Powell was the one guy I thought maybe could actually do something out of that.
Me too.
Out of that group. And yeah, that was a disaster.
We were talking here the other night about the 2017 draft, the great draft.
Oh, yes.
And I've made the comment, I remember how mad that I was that night. This guy, we took him, he's always hurt. Talking about Thor. And he's always hurt too. We drafted him that high. And who in the hell is Alvin Kamara?
I'll be honest with you. I knew a little bit about Alvin Kamara, and actually the guy I liked a lot was Joe Mixon, who was in that draft class. And I had talked myself into bringing, thinking Joe Mixon was the guy we needed, because I wanted to, I was so sick of seeing, what was his name? The guy who kept coming back to the team over and over and over again. Undrafted free agent, running back, supposed to be, another Darren Sproles type of player or a pass catcher.
Kyrie? Cadet?
No, not Kyrie. Travaris Cadet. I was so tired of seeing Cadet on this roster that I was like, I'll take anybody to get rid of Cadet, so I never have to see that dude on this team again.
When I did the player analysis on Mixon, I made the comment then that he was the most pro-ready running back that I had seen coming out of college since Barry Sanders.
And my son was the one that was a big Alvin Kamara fan, and
I had seen him play one game.
Well, I've watched some of the footage of him at Tennessee. It's amazing to think how Tennessee squandered his talent, but that's what Tennessee does. Anyway, I've watched some of the footage of him, but my son blew up my phone as soon as they made that trade. We got Alvin freaking Kamara. He was so happy. And, so that I got to give it to him. That's his Jimmy Graham moment, because I was excited. I like Jimmy Graham back in college, and I go back to the 2007 draft. I was like freaking out, going, the Saints need to draft a tight end. They Drew Brees with a tight end is a must. You saw what he was like when he had Antonio Gates. We need an Antonio Gates kind of player on this team, and I was so furious they didn't draft Greg Olsen. In 2007, we took, Robert Meacham, and Robert Meacham didn't even play that year. So I was mad about that. So, I just wanted to see the Saints bring in a tight end. And every year I was like, okay, what tight ends do I like? I need to bring in this guy. I need to bring in this guy. And they never draft any of them. Mark Andrews was the last tight end. I said, I really want this guy. We didn't get him either. So, I picked some duds too, so don't think I'm like some kind of tight end guru, because I picked some guys and you're gonna look at those names like, really? You thought he was gonna be any good, And it just didn't work out that way. But so Calvin asked the question: who's gonna be the latest Boo Williams, Dan Arnold, Juwan Johnson, tight end, in this room, and I really don't see one. I mean, do you see anybody that could possibly be the next tight end that becomes a project that could turn out to be a pass catcher?
Not at wide receiver right now, guys. But I'll tell you, continue to watch for the development of Juwan Johnson.
Exactly.
Jameis Winston really likes him. And they had obvious chemistry early in the year before Jameis went down with the injury, and then after that, Juwan just became an afterthought. He's extremely strong. He's a little bit lightweight, about 230 or 235, I think. For a traditional inline tight end, but he has a body type, and I'm dating myself and showing my Bronco fanboyship. He has a body type like Shannon Sharp. I'm not comparing Juwan Johnson to Shannon Sharp, but that's who you think of when you watch him play. And if they could develop him a little bit as an inline blocker, he is the best athletic threat that the team has at tight end. I don't count Taysom Hill because, guys, they're going to move him around the formation. So don't give me bullshit about Taysom Hill going to be a tight end. He's not. He's listed as a tight end. He is not. But you watch for the development of Juwan Johnson. He could actually give Adam Troutman a run for not a roster spot, but snaps.
What's frustrating about Adam Troutman is he's really a poor man's Josh Hill right now, and that's what's frustrating because Josh Hill is undrafted free agent, but here you are, you spend a lot of draft capital to get another Josh Hill. So Sean, I mean, is there a guy that you're looking for in the tight end position, tight end room that you think could possibly step up and be a pass catching threat for this team?
I agree with Bob. I think it would be Juwan Johnson. I was really impressed with him last year.
Yeah, the problem you have is Juwan Johnson's useless as a blocker. He's, because he's not that big. So he's strictly going to be a guy you line up outside the numbers. Now, it helps that he's not going to be counted on to be that guy. If he could catch 40 to 50 passes as a receiving tight end, that's a huge step for him. That's huge. Yeah. And, that takes the pressure off of the Saints. I think are going to run a lot of 12 formations, which is 3 wide receivers and an H-back kind of running, fullback and a running back. So an H-back who lines up either off the line or as a blocking tight end. But they really love to run the 11 formation, which again is 3 tight ends, 3 receivers, a tight end, a single back. That's what they call 11. They really like to have that, but I just don't see that inline blocking tight end who can go out and catch passes. I think, if you put Troutman in there, he strictly is a blocker. You know, if he catches a pass, it's going to hit him in the hands. He'll 50-50 shot, he'll catch it, and then he falls down right there. Yeah. I mean, so, if you need 3 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards. You need 15 yards, he's going to get you 3 yards. That kind of guy.
Now, Lucas Krull, the undrafted guy from Pitt, Calvin, I see you bring him up. Lucas Krull, the undrafted guy from Pitt, he's going to cause a lot of Saints fans to say, they got to keep him because he's going to make some pretty catches in training camp. But as a blocker, he's as soft as wet Charmin. He's 6'7", 260. So, I mean, he looks the part. And I said this on draft night. I stole the expression from Draft A, the movie. It looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. If they could get a little bit of blocking out of Krull, he'll stick at the back half of the roster. He could be one of those guys, and active for a couple of games this season, back and forth on the practice squad. But don't buy into, Krull's going to make some pretty catches in minicamp and training camp. Don't think that changes what the Saints are looking for in this position. It's just not going to be a pass catching position this year.
Yeah, and again, I think you're going to see You're going to see a lot of, and we talked about this last week. You're going to see a lot of an extra lineman in there for the blocking and short yardage. Um, so I'm curious to see what happens on fullbacks too. I mean, we don't talk a whole heck of a lot about fullbacks because it's really a dying position in the NFL. But Sean Payton, I know, loved having a fullback because, and Heath Evans was his favorite kind of fullback because he was a blocker but also a pass catcher. And he's been looking for another Heath Evans, or was looking for another Heath Evans for the rest of the Saints' career.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I miss, Jed Collins and Zach Line. I thought those two were some of the best fullbacks that the Saints had since Heath Evans retired. But I don't even honestly know who the fullback is this year.
Our guy John Hendricks is real high on Adam Prentice. They picked up Prentice after he was released from Denver last year.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about him to really comment. It wouldn't surprise me if the Saints didn't necessarily have a listed fullback and use Taysom Hill more in that role. Bring him off of the line in motion and into the backfield as a lead blocker or as a ball carrier. We know that Taysom is a competent pass catcher, with developmental traits, either in space or from the slot or even out of the backfield. So as the roster stands right now, say Dennis Allen wants to keep an extra safety, or say they want to keep a sixth wide receiver, they're going to sacrifice the fullback position to do that.
John, I don't think Kobe Fleener is even aware what camp is anymore. I mean, he's gonna be going, where do I pitch my tent? And I'm Batman. I mean, that's an old commercial, the old Snickers commercial.
Batman.
They should sign. Oh, well, the fullback, and I go back to the 49ers again. The fullback I love is the 49ers current fullback, because it's like that's the guy that the Saints need. They need a guy like him. They need a Tom Rathman. They need one of those kind of fullbacks. Of course, 49ers will never give him up because he does all the things that they want a fullback to do in an offense, the same things that the Saints could use a fullback for. So, that's probably one of the more underrated positions that I'm interested to see how camp plays out. Where does that guy come from? That not only a wrecking ball at fullback, but also somebody who can run those little swing out patterns and catch the pass, especially when it's short yardage and goal line stuff. When you don't expect it to go on anybody else. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about tonight is, do you know what the significance of today's date is, other than it's the end of May? Bob shakes his head furiously, and so does Sean. Bob, what's the significance of today's date?
I think it was 37. Yeah, 37 years ago today, Mr. Tom Benson officially took control of the team, from John Meekum. And we talk about Jim Mora and the Dome Patrol ushering in a new era of Saints football. It really started, with Tom Benson, buying the team and then taking over operations in 1985.
Absolutely, yeah. It's yes, yeah. Wife asked me a question. Yes, the this in this date in history, this Tom Benson officially takes over by the team. In fact, I was watching the game from December of 1985 between the Rams and the Saints. I'm sorry, 84 between the Rams and the Saints, where Meekum essentially has just announced to the media, that's it, I'm selling the team. I'm out. I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore. And
the feeling was mutual, John.
yeah. 19 years of ownership, and the closest they came to a winning season was 79 and 83, 8-8 records. It took Tom Benson 2 seasons to It took Tom Benson 2 seasons to turn this team into a winner. 87, they go 12-3. And that just showed you that all those years, all the bad drafting, all that losing really fell into the lap of one man, and that was John Meekum. Now, granted, a 26-year-old guy, or I think that's all he was, 26 years old, giving ownership of a franchise.
Wow.
I mean, could you imagine, having a 26-year-old today running an NFL franchise? What would that be like?
I'd be drinking and partying with the players. I don't know about you guys.
That's exactly what he did. And that's why they had that training camp at Vero Beach, and that's why they had that training camp in California that first year in '67. That's exactly what he was doing. He'd park his yacht out there and have the music playing and the dancing and stuff like that, and it's a party. And they kept track of the cash in an old cigar box. I mean, it was just amazing. And he never built anything. He was using his daddy's money. He's the opposite of Lamar Hunt. Lamar Hunt was a young man that, inherited his parents' money too, but he was a lot more mature. He wasn't 26 years old. So, yeah, Tom Benson took over, and Bobby Hebert tells this story. And I don't know if I've told this story on the show before or not, but Tom Benson knew absolutely nothing about football.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an Edwin Edwards fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm like everybody else who can't stand him. I'll tell 1,000 stories about how funny he was. But I got to give Edwin Edwards credit. The Saints were in danger of being moved to Jacksonville. Jacksonville was already courting the then Baltimore Colts. In 1981, they had a huge sign up because Robert Irsay was looking for a new stadium, wanted to get out of Baltimore, and they were going to call themselves, they had a Welcome Jacksonville Colts, and they had all the Baltimore Colts stuff all over the place. And Baltimore, of course, moved in 1983. So John Meekum put a price, $70 million, non-negotiable, for the Saints. Pay $70 million for this franchise, non-negotiable. And nobody in Louisiana could afford that. Nobody in Louisiana was going to buy the Saints. And the Prickster Group out of Chicago was thinking seriously about paying Meekum the $70 million. There's a New York Times article on the internet of the Prickster Group talking about buying the Saints and moving them to Jacksonville because Jacksonville was a hot market. They were competing with Tampa and Seattle in '76 for a franchise. We all know Jacksonville had a USFL franchise at that, in '83. They missed out on the Colts. They wanted to buy the Saints a year later in '84, '85. And Edwin Edwards got Tom Benson and a group of investors, but Tom Benson was really the money man. Group of investors to buy this team, and he made sure that this team stayed in New Orleans, worked out a state agreement and that kind of stuff. So with that, I don't know if they got into a fist fight, but I've heard this story before.
I have too.
But it was an argument. It was an argument, and Kilmer told Meekum what he was doing wrong in no uncertain terms. I could tell you some stories about the old Saints. One of the players got so drunk, and he was causing so much trouble, in a bar. They called the NOPD on him, and he said, one of the players said, "Go ahead and shoot me. No gun can hurt me." That's how drunk he was, and.
That sounds more like the Peruvian marching dust.
That story. I do have a Billy Kilmer story, which reminds me of that. But that story where, Doug Atkins, he was in his room, and the rookies above him were playing the radio real loud and playing records real loud. And he came in, And he said, "You need to turn that music off. It's lights out." And he said, "What's the matter, old man? Music too loud for you?" And he says, "What'd you say?" And Dave Witzel was walking up because they were both former Chicago Bear teammates. He says, "I said, is the music too loud?" And by the time he said the word loud, Atkins had pulled a gun out of his pants. He had his pajama pants and shot the record player. And Witzel tells the story. The record goes, right there. And so that was the end of music at training camp facility at Caltech. So, yeah, I mean, they had some funny stuff. But Billy Kilmer, I want to tell this story real quick, and then we can go. So Billy Kilmer plays the Saints in 72. Yes, I think either 72 or 73 in Tulane Stadium. Well, the former Saints players and the ones that were still on the roster and stuff had a welcome home Billy party in the French Quarter the night before. And Kilmer felt the effects the next day. And the Saints beat the Redskins. And I want to say it's 72. I have to go back and look, but the Saints beat the Redskins that day because Kilmer was not up to par that day. So there's a lot of funny stories about the old Saints and the partying in the French Quarter. And the French Quarter is really the French Quarter. But anyway, yeah. So today's important date in history. Thank you, Edwin Edwards, for getting Tom Benson to buy this team. And thank you, Tom Benson, for buying this team. Oh, yeah, real quick. The story I was going to tell before I saw that. So this is how little Benson didn't know football. Bobby Hebert had just gotten signed by the Saints that year. And this is one of the first practices. And the team comes out and the players are in the offense is in white jerseys, the defense is in black jerseys, and they're going to practice. And, Bum Phillips actually offered to resign right then and there as soon as Benson bought the team. And he's like, "No, don't resign because I need you to teach me the business. I need you to teach me the game. I need you to teach me all kinds of things." So one of the first observations Benson makes when he stands out there and watches him practice is, "Well, I see one of our problems right now. Look at what we got here. We got half the team in one color jerseys and half the team in the other color jerseys. How can we be one team if we got guys in different color jerseys?" And they're like, "No, Tom, defense is in black, offense is in white. That's how they can tell them apart for this practice." So yeah, that's Benson, but thankfully he made the right hires. He brought in Jim Finks, who in turn brought in Jim Moore and really brought a level of stability. And honestly, except for the Mike Ditka hire, Benson really did not make any bad hires over his tenure compared to Meekum. I mean, even Jim Haslett until the very end, Jim Haslett at least was a competent coach, not a great one by any stretch of imagination, but he was competent. Ditka was incompetent. Ditka was crazy. Ditka had no business being a coach again. But Moore was a good hire. Certainly Randy Mueller was a great hire as general manager. Even replacing Mueller with Mickey Loomis, you can argue back and forth whether or not how well Loomis can evaluate talent, but Loomis has proven to be a good hire for this franchise.
Yes.
And of course Peyton, speaks for itself. So anyway, thank you guys. I see Bob yawning. Bob's already smoked. He's ready to go to bed. It's 10:37 his time. I'm ready to go too. Sean, any last words?
Who dat?
Okay. Bob, any last thoughts or anything?
Guys, fans, Who Dat Nation, just thank you, for your support of all three of us. Not only this podcast, but our work outside of it, and in the media world. Couldn't do this without you. You guys are what makes this fun. And bear with us through the dog days of June and July. We'll still be putting out content. We'll still be putting out shows on a daily basis or a weekly basis. So, but thank you for your support.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you some more stories if y'all patient enough to listen to me. I'll tell some more old Saint stories and tell you about Hank Stram talking about how Bobby Douglas threw the wrong receiver 17 times in one game, and Stram says, "Well, why didn't you?" One of the reporters said, "Why didn't you pulling?" He says, "I didn't think you could keep doing it." Anyway, all right. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.